Thank you. To start us off, Mr. Wakaria, could you please take us through the key drivers behind the strategic partnership between banks and fintech companies?
Thank you, Carol. So when you look at banks and fintechs, each of these entities has strengths and gaps that they can leverage off each other and have very mutually beneficial relationships. So taking banks, for example, banks tend to be larger and therefore have a bigger balance sheet, a bigger financial ability. Generally, again, banks are older, therefore they have that brand, a client base, and in many cases, the banks have a wider geographical distribution network. So with those strengths, we look at fintechs also. Fintechs tend to be more agile in terms of, for the niche or solution set that a fintech has decided to solve for, you'll find that they can move faster. They can go deeper to solve that problem than a bank can. Secondly, you'll find that the client experience that a fintech offers can be very customized to the client base that solution fits. So if you require an app, if you require a capability within an app, if you require a different channel, a quick setup in some part of the country or some form of technology, a fintech is able to move faster. So when you look at these strengths that the two have, it becomes possible for example, a bank to work with a fintech and deliver to our clients a solution that if it were to be done in-house will take a lot longer, will likely also cost a lot more when compared to a fintech that is able to deliver that pretty fast. So this symbiotic relationship is something that we are all leveraging. I'm speaking for my employer and for the industry as a whole. This is something that we are all leveraging and we are seeing the benefits of in the recent past and into the future.
Very well put. So having identified the key drivers behind the strategic partnerships, maybe Mr. Timothy, you could take us through the benefits of fintechs partnering with established banks or financial institution. More specifically, how does this promote or foster or impact growth in the market reach and access to resources?
Well, I think looking at the background of the relationship between fintech companies and banks, initially it was purely competition. Because I feel like the fintech companies came to take what belonged to the banks initially. But with the transformation that has come right now, I think the benefit for fintech companies when they collaborate with banks will be, first of all, credibility. Two is they have access to market, which, because the nature of fintech companies is usually small businesses or startups. The other thing is regulatory support. As someone in KCB said, when fintechs collaborate with banks, they take advantage of the regulation that banks are already enjoying. The other part is with fintech companies being very innovative and agile in the way they work, they would also enjoy the expertise in terms of the market, in terms of technology that the banks already possess. So I think that now forms a good basis for the collaboration instead of just competing for the market share.
Another key aspect that, just to top on that, would be the aspects of financial inclusion as a result of such collaboration and partnership. Maybe Mr. Elias could take us through some of the strategic partnerships or some of the examples of successful initiatives that you may have experienced or come across as a result of this partnerships between financial fintechs and mainstream banking. in line with financial inclusion and accessibility, most especially in serving the underserved regions. Perhaps you could maybe have experience that you would like to share with the attendees as a result of such partnerships.
Where we are, particularly in Africa, in terms of bankable and unbankable elements, that really presents a very big image or a very big opportunity for fintechs, banks, in terms of how then do we enable access of financial services to various people across the continent. Now, this is highly hampered from an evolution whereby we are seeing from a product-centric to a customer-centric evolution. That really means that there's need to look at how strategic collaborations and opportunities will kind of shift that particular bargain, whereby we provide solutions that are highly customer-centric. And for that to happen, then there's need for a stronger collaborative approach, not only within the banking systems, not only within the insurance systems, because if you look at where a normal person is, particularly within the African continent, there's need for inclusion. There's need to look at how then we reach out to those particular persons that have no banking accounts or have no any form of protection. And that basically means that there are different channels that we need to think about. Now, this is brought about by a number of challenges, from the low demand of these particular financial solutions, to what we call, so there's low demand, there's low quality supply, because when you want to reach the last mile, there's always cost associated with that. And the banks might not have an opportunity to reach to the last mile. They need to look at who are these other actors that can enable us access these types of markets. And that's where strategic collaborations are really, really important in terms of identifying what are the pain points of these particular communities, coming up with relevant solutions for these particular communities, but also looking at how then technology can play an important role in reaching out to these particular communities. Maybe I'll give an example of a number of initiatives that we've seen. There's need to build an ecosystem, and that ecosystem need to look at different elements that will enable us to reach to the last mile. For instance, we need to know what do these customers use, and in this case then you see some products are kind of trying to use certain brands. The community do understand and trust those particular brands. So it will be easier for a banking or a bank institution or an insurance institution to partner with that particular trusted brand to be able to access these particular customers. I'll give an example of a company that is currently providing to the border riders. So whenever these particular border riders are consuming fuel, they tend to use that particular card as a payment platform, but also that card enables them to get access to some form of saving, access to some form of protection, because they are in a risky business. So there's need for us to look at how then our businesses can shift from what I call more product-centric to more customer-centric, by looking at what are the pain points and enabling us to provide the access to the last mile to these particular communities that are heavily underserved and that are currently unbanked.
While we focus on the customer-centric solution, maybe Mr. Wakaria could share with us what or how such collaborations contribute in your experience to enhancing customer experience in the evolving customer satisfaction with it.
What banks are strong at and what fintechs are strong at. There are many ways in which, at the end of the day, we are trying to solve for our clients, and therefore there are many ways that the two types of entities can work together to deliver that. Number one is, what do customers want today? There was an earlier conversation here talking about APIs, and APIs exist to solve for the real-time 24/7 communication between people and therefore systems. And what you'll find is that fintechs are able to deliver on this 24/7 real-time integration and communication, and ability to to answer or provide the requests that clients have, and are able to deliver such solutions faster than, say, a traditional bank would. So that's one aspect that helps banks deal with the modern requirement by clients, especially individuals and retail clients, for 24/7 real-time payments and collections. Secondly is, again, we expect our banks, the fintechs that are providing a service to us, to know us. That means, based on if I'm to use an example of an app that knows my preferences, embeds those preferences in the solutions that it provides me, and is able to create a very bespoke experience for each of the individual users that we have. So again, fintechs are easily able to provide such services and provide them in a channel that is very, accepted by our clients. Another one is what channels are we able to reach our clients through? I used an example of an app earlier, but if we are dealing with clients who are, in geographically remote locations, will USSD be able to handle that? Again, that capability is easily added on to a product suite that a fintech is able to provide. Even though a bank at the back end may be the one that's providing, whether it's that balance sheet or savings or other service that is being discussed here. Another aspect is security. So most of the payment services providers have, certification like PCI DSS, and that gives confidence and wins the trust of clients. And again, when you look at it, it's a win-win situation. A bank that's able to work and deliver a solution with such a fintech is able to win that trust and therefore win more business from that client. I'll end with what I love about fintechs the most, the ability to truly drill down to a specific client segment or solution. Just to take a hypothetical scenario. While a bank that acquires payments through cards, mobile money, and other channels is purely providing a payment service, a fintech can layer on many other services on top. A mini ERP, for example, a lending application, for example, whether it's buy now, pay later, or some other kind of solution on top of it. So this ability to work together, each entity playing to their strengths, and therefore providing the best service for the client is what leads to a really great client experience, such that this financial service becomes just a service. It's not necessarily individualized based on the relationship with the entity that's providing that service.
So very well, Eli. Maybe you can, maybe you can just shed light on what sort of advice you may have for banks and fintechs looking to explore strategic partnerships in the digital banking space, because as we relate, or as we've heard from fellow panelists, at the end of it, this is a journey of digital transformation. So what may potential partner or future partners looking into such collaborations have to consider, or rather maybe include also the challenges that they may face, even as we address the key issues for considerations for the partners looking into streamlining business in the digital transformation world?
All right, thank you for the question. I think while establishing a collaborative relationship between fintechs and banks, it's important for both sides to evaluate their partners or the people that they want to partner with in terms of regulation, in terms of their innovation capacity, because in most times you might find that these startups, especially in the fintech area, are afraid of being swallowed up by the banks. Instead of collaborating, they get swallowed up, and then that sort of kills their nature of doing business or their nature of operating, especially in the innovation part. The other part is, I think, while in the way they approach their business models, it's always important to switch from a service-centric model to customer-centric model, because that basically what does it creates more opportunities for them even to grow, especially for the fintech. For the banks, again, they might get to enjoy now the capacity to reach more customers because fintechs are in that space. The other challenge that I see is in terms of technology. Banks are known for running traditional infrastructure, especially in their data centers. For fintechs, that's different because most of them operate in the cloud. So it becomes a challenge for them when they are doing integrations, and I think it's also important for banks to evaluate what their fintech partner is able to do.
Very well. Mr. Timothy, still Timothy, let me just debunk this with you even as we proceed. Now that we have established that, if I'm wrong, maybe you may correct me, fintechs are not a competition to mainstream banking, right? If my take is accurate, I stand corrected. We may have a different opinion. However, how can banks and fintechs strike a balance between collaboration and competition in their partnerships?
I think if we look at it from the point of what they do in the industry, right? Fintechs provide innovative technologies for financial services. And for banks, they could leverage on that to let the fintech companies build the solutions for them rather than view them as a competition, because that's where the growth is. You want speed to market, you want to innovate new ideas, you want services or products that, for instance, for fintechs that are into AI and ML, you know your customer services, they are huge on that. So I think it's all about striking a balance between how do they leverage what fintechs bring on the table and what do fintechs take from the banks in terms of capacity, in terms of the size of the market that they get to enjoy, credibility again, as I said before, regulation, because as startups, I think someone spoke about regulating fintechs, and I think that's one space where fintech companies can take advantage of.
George, maybe you want to chip in on that?
Yeah. So I think a good way of establishing that balance is building trust. And I believe the best way to build that trust is to set the expectations down early, to know exactly why that partnership is being, arrived at, and document that. I think the best way to ensure that everyone lives to their expectations, their promises, having some legal backing for it. Otherwise, there is no way of enforcing that or punishing any, deviation from what was expected. So that trust has to work through documentation of expectations, and secondly, keeping an open line of communication. Innovation generally means you can't know everything at the beginning. Things change a lot, and therefore, as the relationship grows, those open lines of communication will make sure that new solutions, new expectations, any breakages are resolved early.
Okay. Speaking of the factors to consider in such collaborations, of course, there are so many other regulatory issues besides the innovation, legal compliance that come to play. One question that was addressed in the previous panel, which we were to sufficiently address, we still would do or would want input from the panelists generally. Trust and security, especially with the big elephant in the room, which is data. Data is a whole worldwide issue that the world is grappling with. We want to understand, or maybe we could align ourselves with how can banks ensure privacy, regulatory compliance, and maintain customer trust, even as we work together with the fintech companies. So this is something that may welcome Eli to just put in, and any other person that may have an input.
Yes, so, over time, I think regulation has been highlighted as a key issue, particularly when it comes to innovation. And what we've seen is that there's reason why regulations do exist, particularly if you look at customer privacy issues, basically led through customer protection, data protection, innovation risks that might lead to exclusion at times. If maybe you're using AI and the data points are quite granular, you might really get some people are kind of excluded from the financial systems, to some level of biasness in terms of that innovation might bring. And that basically brings a bigger question on how then do regulators kind of balance that out, whereby they kind of enable innovations to come in, at the same time ensure that the customers or the users of these particular fintech solutions are well protected. So in that particular case, then you'll be able to see kind of regulators are coming up with different mechanisms of enabling that. So for instance, to ensure that there's strength of collaboration, we've seen regulators initiating efforts such as accelerators, and that basically enables the ecosystem, be it banks, be it innovators, be it fintechs, to understand their level of collaboration. And that kind of provides what we call regulatory clarity as they kind of bring these particular systems into the play. There are also other mechanisms that have been used to strengthen collaborations, such as basically setting up regulatory sandboxes, just to ensure that the fintech and the partner that they are going to have into the picture really understand their level of collaboration and play. So it is important for us to look at all these mechanisms. And I'll give you an example. Over the last couple of years, we've been, as FSD Africa, we've been doing what we call a Bima Lab Accelerator program that basically brings all the ecosystem players together to understand their scope and to understand their level of collaboration, basically to catalyze that particular change that is required into the market. So it's important for us to do understand the reason why regulations exist, but also to look at how then we balance all these elements for the success of not only the customers that we are targeting, but also to maintain the financial integrity of the ecosystem that you are building.
Maybe just to chip in to that, speaking from a legal point of view, of course, data protection is a whole issue with these institutions being set up in different jurisdictions, or having all your infrastructure hosted in different spaces. So I think some of the most important issues is to understand each and the partner regulatory frameworks within which they fall. For example, do you have reciprocal laws in your KYC documentation? Are issues of data protection and customer privacy sufficiently addressed? Do you have models to address breach responses in any case collaboratively, and as well as the regulatory authorities? Are you familiar with both partner regulatory regimes? If in any case there are requirements that need to be met at an equivocal point. So it's very important that even as we foster collaboration, innovation, and growth between fintechs and mainstream banking, that the regulatory aspects are key, even as we sign or get into such agreements. So I think even as we finalize, we may want to look at what are the successful partnerships, goals, shared values that maybe we have experience or we may want to share, that even as mainstream banking and fintech seek to collaborate, what are some of the effective communication or alignment of goals and values that we may take through? I will leave it as an open one because I think we may all have to,
I think I will just highlight in the context of infrastructure, right? The collaborations that we've seen between fintech companies and banks operating on the cloud, and really taking advantage of AWS services, especially for the open banking, API integrations, security as well. So I think in that space, banks like ABSA, Stanbic, Standard Chartered, I know DCB are also in that line. So I think there's a huge space for them to operate, yeah.
Maybe just also to say something on collaboration. I think also from the fintech perspective, the banking sector perspective, there's also need to look at the emerging risks that are currently cropping up. So for instance, how can the banking sector, through strategic collaborations, think about bigger risks such as climate change, carbon transactions, because that will require a lot of strategic collaborations. We might not only look at it from the current risks that we are currently looking at as a financial sector, but also think about the future of the continent, the future of this particular world. Can the banking sector think about strategic collaborations that will help us in tackling issues such as climate change, ensuring that we kind of drive green bonds and green transactions? How then do we bring green fintechs, carbon fintechs, just to address some of the issues that are currently arising? And that basically means that there's need for us to collaborate to tackle even these emerging challenges that are existing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, panel members. Our time is up. However, I believe that we can continue deliberating going forward on any other issues that may arise. Thank you very much, and do have a good afternoon.